There we go. Hold on. I took my fluffy pins out my cup. Kids, well, I tell you, they keep their hands to themselves. My stuff. All right, beautiful people. Happy Saturday. Lord, forgive me. I'm blaming for taking, well, I'm blaming for taking my little fluffy pen. I forgot I stuck it on the inside. I'm still messing my other one, though. Elijah Grand Rising, been back. Greetings, greetings. Happy Saturday, beautiful people. It is November the 12th, 2022, day 261 of year 4, reading through the books of the law and the prophets, another 4-year consecutive day count, day 1,280. And today we're picking back up in Oahspe in the book of Su.i.c.id.e on page 22, chapter 7. Chapter 7. And once we get done here today, we're going to hop over for a few more minutes in a field guide to the spirit world, picking up on page 67. We may or may not get to finish the chapter, The Black Dog Unleashed. We'll see. We'll see what we're working with. All right, beautiful people. All right, so let's go ahead and get started here, because I got to be on top of my time today. Father, we thank you that you are so patient. Yes and amen. All right, y'all. Page 22, Book of Su.i.c.id.e and Oahspe, chapter 7. Or chapter VII if you're using an electronic version, right? Okay. As mortals sail corporal ships across the corporal ocean, so sailed the ship of God in the atmospheric ocean. As a man having 5 sons sendeth 4 away to far off countries and keepeth 1 at home, so did God with the 5 lords bequeath him by great Jehovah. And now had God departed from the foundation of Horeb in a ship in heaven in a ship in heaven to visit his 4 far off sons, the lords of the 4 great divisions of the earth, who had to do with both mortals and the spirits of the dead for the glory of Jehovah. First to Jude, or to Judd. Judd was what? Europe. No, I'm sorry. Judd was Asia. This is Europe. Okay. Verse 3, page 22. First to Judd, Lord of Judd, he headed his ship, running close to the earth, bounding forth and sapping up fuel from the tall forest to feed the phosphorescent flame, running easily to the wild coast on the west of Waga was reached. Here halted he his ship, first God of the first lords of the earth, till his navigators told the distance of the wide sea before. Then gathering fuel and substance from the rich growing lands, he stowed the ship to the full, he and his traveling host. And God went in, commanding, go forth into the sea of heaven, and on plunged the ship of God in the winds of the blue firmament, high soaring above the black clouds sprung from the corporal ocean. And after blue firmament is reference number 4, and at the bottom it says, in the blue winds of the blue firmament. I'll read the whole verse 4 again. And God went in, commanding, go forth, forth into the sea of heaven, and plunged the ship of God in the winds of the blue firmament, high soaring above the black clouds sprung from the corporal ocean. And the music of his 1,000 sinars leaped forth in time, and tuned to the waves, plenteous and most defiant. Jehovah looked down from the highest of all the heavens, his everlasting throne of thrones, saying, onward, onward, tame the elements, O God, O man, the earth is thine, the air above is thine, stretch forth thine arm, and tame the elements I have made. Verse 6, page 22. Onward sped the ship of God, by the force of wheels matured, and from its hollowed light displaying its purpose before other traveling gods and men, and other ships cruising on adventurous paths in Jehovah's wide oceans of splendor. Merrily sang the crew, and danced and sighted the wide expanse, premising of the scattering ships coursing hither and yon in strange colors and marvelous swiftness. On one side, the rising moon, the setting sun on the other. Beneath lie the black clouds and great corporal ocean, and yet high above twinkled the stars and the planets of the great serpent on his long journey. God came forth. While I'm reading this, it reminds me of a student walking through the halls of a high school, and everybody is on their own little journey, on their own little path, going to their class to learn different things. I don't know why, but that's what it seemed like to me. In a greater expanse of the Father's kingdoms and worlds and stuff, as they're traveling on their educational path to learn about everything that the Father has done. I'm going to go back up to verse 5. This is good. Jehovah looked down from the highest of all the heavens, his everlasting throne of thrones, saying, onward, onward, tame the elements, O God, O man, the earth is thine, the air above is thine, stretch forth thine arm and tame the elements I have made. Onward sped the ship of God, by the force of wheels matured, and from its hollowed light displaying its purpose before other traveling gods and men, and other ships cruising on adventurous paths in Jehovah's wide oceans of splendor. Merrily sang the crew, and danced and sighted the wide expanse, premising of the scattering ships coursing hither and yon in strange colors and marvelous swiftness. On one side, the rising moon, the setting sun on the other. Beneath lie the black clouds and great corporal ocean, and yet high above twinkled the stars and the planets of the great serpent on his long journey. God came forth and surveyed the scene, and the power of Jehovah moved upon him. Then gathered around him his 7,000 loves and traveling companions. God said, all thy places are new, great Jehovah. For thousands of years have I gazed on thy matchless splendors, seen and unseen, but thy glory groweth richer day by day. When thy voice came to me more than 100 years ago, saying, go, my son, I have a new garden planted. Take some workmen and till the soil. I foresaw the long labor of the generations that will spring up out of the earth. I feared and trembled. I said, how shall it be, O Jehovah? Shall the new earth be peopled over, and mortals run their course as on other worlds before? First in wholesome love and worship, and do reverence to the gods, and then for ages and ages bury themselves in bloody wars? O lead me forth, Father. Jehovah, I will take thy garden for a season, and fence it round with lords and wise kingdoms, and with thy potent spirit hedge mortals on every side, that the earth shall bloom as a paradise for angels and men. And thy sons and daughters came with me, and engrafted thy immortal kingdom. How is it now? How compares my labor with that of the other gods of the other worlds? O ye archangels, gods and goddesses, look down on the great earth. Jehovah hath filled my arms with a great load. I tremble on the immortal scales. And God, transfixed, looked up into the swift passing sky, where his voice reached to the thrones of the Etherean worlds, whereon the Osirian regents reigned in all power. And down from amidst the stars shot a single ray of light, engrossed with the adorable words, Jehovah's Son, all hail, hail, God of earth, Jehovah's Son, glory, glory to great Jehovah for all that thou hast done. Then upward, hey, everybody still asleep up there. Everybody still asleep, but you can go check. Then upward furled the shining light till it faded midst the far-off stars. Anew the trumpeters and singers sent forth a strain of sweet music, spirited and sounding full of soul. And as the music glided forth across the waters, lo, other music, strange and welcome, came from the west lands to the borders of the ocean. The ship across the sea and the host of the lords had come to meet the God of earth and heaven. And now, saluting loud and long, the two ships drew close to anchorage. Presently the messengers interchanged, and in Jehovah's name greeted God and his hosts, who were old-time friends to the Lord and his. God said, by thy will, O Jehovah, let us take course for the Lord's kingdom and place of labor. And presently the two ships sped forth close to the earth, conjoined in the music of anthems of olden times. Far up into the heart of the country, where fertile lands and mountains and waters were close companion to the Asuan race, the ships led on till one pillar of fire, standing on a mountainside, proclaimed the place of the Lord. And here they halted and made fast the vessel, unseen by mortals. All right, y'all. So we'll be at 12 minutes. We can probably read one more chapter, maybe two, right? All right, y'all. For everybody else that just came in, hey, Shebrew, Tabitha, Hannah, BC. It is a beautiful day, isn't it? And everybody else that's hanging out in the background, top of the day to you all. We're on page 23, chapter 8 of the book of Sethantes in Oahspe, or chapter VIII. All right. These chieftains had been long friends on other worlds and pledged to join in an adventure on some new corporal world to raise up to Jehovah sons and daughters. Now was it being fulfilled in the Lord and God remotely situated, and the time of this visit much looked forward to. And so God and the Lord came forth, saying, in Jehovah's name, met at last. I bet they didn't know how much trouble they was about to. I mean, I guess God did, because he was like, is we going to go through these same cycles that we did on other worlds? Like, everything started off good. But then after we get everything set up nice and situated and everybody's flowing in peace, all of a sudden, wars, bloody wars, all this stuff break out for multiple generations. Is this going to be the same process? And the father was like, well, yeah, that's how it develops. Listen. These chieftains had been long friends on other worlds and pledged to join in an adventure of some new corporal world to raise up to Jehovah sons and daughters. Now was it being fulfilled in the Lord and God remotely situated, and the time of this visit much looked forward to. And so God and the Lord came forth, saying, in Jehovah's name, met at last. And they embraced and reassured each other that it was really true, which they had talked of 1,000 years before. And then came forward all the hosts of God and the hosts of the Lord, knowing one another and saluting and embracing also. Thereupon they proceeded to the house of the Lord, which mortals had been inspired to build of wood and clay. And when they were within, they joined in prayer and thanks to Jehovah, and they sang and danced and rejoiced to their souls' content. Jamia, shalom. Mom, shalom, shalom. Keep infinite rising, sis. Oahspe College University. Light and peace, everyone. That's what he said. Light and peace. Okay, verse 4, page 23. At sunrise, the new morning on the mortal, At sunrise the next morning, the mortal priests and priestesses, led by a prophet, went into the house of the Lord to pray and sing and dance, as they had been taught by inspiration of the Lord. But many people lingered without, saying to one another, I fear, to hop. For last night I saw lights in the house of the Lord, and I heard like singing and dancing before the altar of God. Nevertheless, their companions persuaded them, and they went in and sang and danced also. After a time of rejoicing and of quiet, the Lord said, Behold, O God, the follies of judgment and the vain calculations of even lords and gods. We look upon the mature man, saying, Alas, he is stubborn in his own way. We cannot convert him. Then we desire the immature, saying, Him will I raise up in my own way, and he shall not depart from my judgment. But we tire of his immaturity and slow growth. God said, Hereon hangeth the highest testimony of the person of great Jehovah. The nearest blank of all the living the nearest blank of all the living created he man, purposely unlike all the rest and devoid of sense. Whereas, according to the order of the other animal world, a newborn babe should be already wise, right? So some of them babies, they come out the womb, they drop on the ground for a quick second, and I'm like, come on, baby, let's go. We got predators after us, and the baby's up, going fast. Where I'm like, imagine if humans dropped out the womb, taking off running, right? But yeah, you got to be carried around and stuff, and, you know, just attended to for a long time. Hold on. Verse 8, page 23, God said, Hereon hangeth the highest testimony of the person of great Jehovah. The nearest blank of all the living created he man, purposely unlike the rest, devoid of sense. Whereas, according to the order of the other animal world, a newborn babe should be already wise. Jehovah saith, All the living have I provided with certain paths to travel in, but man alone I created new out of all things, dead and dissolved, and he shall grow forever. Put an asterisk beside it if you ain't got your highlighters. I already got a highlighter, so now I'm going to asterisk it this time. Lavon, blessings. Page 23. I'm going to read verse 9 again. Jehovah saith, All the living have I provided with certain paths to travel in, but man alone I created new out of all things, dead and dissolved, and he shall grow forever. To the beast I gave an already created sense, and after sense is self, and it's reference number 5, and at the bottom 5 says sense or instinct. But man alone I created new out of all things, dead and dissolved, and he shall grow forever. To the beast I gave an already created sense, self. To man I allotted angels, teachers, or parents, right? To the beast I gave an already created sense, self. To man I allotted angels, and even these have I provided with others above them, and yet others above them forever and ever. Hence the first of man, the newborn babe, I created a blank in sense and judgment, that he may be a witness that even he himself was fashioned and created anew by my hand. Neither created I him imperfectly, that he should re-enter a womb and be born over again. That which I do well, saith Jehovah. Hold on. That which I do is well done, saith Jehovah. I already got that highlighted, but I'm going to underline it this time and asterisk it. Right? Ain't no reincarnation, people. If you're still believing in it, it ain't. Neither created I him imperfectly, that he should re-enter a womb and be born over again. That which I do is well done, saith Jehovah. The Lord said, Thou art wise, O God. The opposites prove Jehovah. The opposites prove Jehovah. Water runneth downhill, but man walketh up the hillside. The tree groweth up out of the ground while it liveth, but after death it falleth. Man standeth on the earth, but the earth resteth on that which is lighter than the earth. Jehovah saith, The life of the tree is of me. The unseen that holdeth the corporal earth is in its place is of me. Let me read the whole thing over again. Verse 10. The Lord said, Thou art wise, O God. The opposites prove Jehovah. Water runneth downhill, but man walketh up the hillside. The tree groweth up out of the ground whilst it liveth, but after death it falleth. Man standeth on the earth, but the earth resteth on that which is lighter than the earth. Jehovah saith, The life of the tree is of me. The unseen that holdeth the corporal earth in its place is of me. And yet, O God, who can attain to know Jehovah? The mortal saith, When I am dead and risen in heaven, I shall see the great Spirit. But he faileth, being still helpless, yea, as helpless in his place as he was helpless on the earth. Then he saith, When I am strong and wise, like lords and gods, and can traverse the wide firmament, then I will see Jehovah. But when he riseth and can shape his vessel through the whirlwinds of the vortices, But when he riseth and can shape his vessel through the whirlwinds of the vortices of heavens, he is called Lord or God. Lo, he findeth the arks and the ether standing before him still. More and more is he appalled at the thought of the great I am, who liveth still beyond. He hurrieth down to the corporal earth to teach mortals and spirits of Jehovah, and his endless worlds and exalted heavens. But lo, the darkness of men, they say, I see him not, I hear him not, I believe him not. He is but as the wind, going without sense, as the water goeth downhill. So is he. He is dead, he is nothing. And the Lord inventeth ways and means. Yea, he teacheth man to pray and sing to Jehovah, that the sounds may lead his soul upward. The Lord telleth him to wear clothes and hide his nakedness from the Lord. And the Lord sendeth angels to award him for his good deeds. And the angels of the Lord lay plots and stratagems in man's pathway to stir him up. Yea, Jehovah gave man sleep, so that his corporal bound spirit might see and hear heavenly things. Now, asterisk, this is the first time, but I'm going to highlight it this time. Kevin, shalom, shalom. Hold on. I'm going to read all of verse 13 again. Okay, verse 13, page 24. We're in the book of Su.i.c.id.e, y'all. And the Lord inventeth ways and means. Yea, he teacheth man to pray and sing to Jehovah, that the sounds may lead his soul upward. The Lord telleth him to wear clothes and hide his nakedness from the Lord. And the Lord sendeth angels to award him for his good deeds. And the angels of the Lord lay plots and stratagems in man's pathway to stir him up. Yea, Jehovah gave man sleep, so that his corporal bound spirit might see and hear heavenly things. But man loadeth his stomach and debaucheth on intoxicating smoke and drink till his soul is buried in darkness. People, don't do this to yourselves. You're going to keep yourself cut off from the Creator. Like, stop eating so late and stop doing things that destroy the body, because it buries the soul in darkness, and it clogs up your hearing, and you can't see. People that don't dream can't hear spiritually. That's an indication. The check engine light, that's a check engine light flashing. If you can't see and you can't hear spiritually, check engine light is blaring. Yea, Jehovah gave man sleep, so that his corporal bound spirit might see and hear heavenly things. But man loadeth his stomach and debaucheth on intoxicating smoke and drink till his soul is buried in darkness. And the Lord crieth out in despair, How weak am I, O Jehovah, before thee? I took upon me to be Lord over men on the earth, to learn my lesson in the government of worlds. But, O Jehovah, I know I fail in thy sight. What will thy God say when he beholdeth my little good? What pity have the archangels for thy struggling Lord of earth? God perceived the sorrow of his friend, and he said, O Jehovah, who art almighty, how keener hast thou made our sense of our own weakness than those who look upon us. He have wrought out of such crude substance, and I sing to his praise and love. Lo, I have looked upon the naked man and woman of this great land, crawling on hands and feet, with no thought but to eat. And I have seen them raised up by thy lords and his ashars, to walk upright, and to use words of speech, and to wear clothes and skins to hide their nakedness. Yea, O Father, I have cried out with great joy, and called aloud unto thee, O Jehovah, saying, who knoweth the labor of the Lord? Will man ever forget to sing praises to the Lord God? But Jehovah said, I will keep some of the tribes of men in darkness till the last days. For man in his conceit shall be confounded, for he shall perceive that the tribes of darkness cannot put away their own darkness. Yea, man shall bow down in reverence to my lords in the early days of the earth. Thus converse, where are the tops to these that have now dried out? Where the tops?
Them upstairs.
Them upstairs? Go get them. I just bought these highlighters. They got crayons. Why they be messing? They be messing with my stuff. I lock my stuff up. Verse 16. But Jehovah said, I will keep some of the tribes of men in darkness till the last days. For man in his conceit shall be confounded, for he shall perceive that the tribes of darkness cannot put away their own darkness. Yea, man shall bow down in reverence to my lords in the early days of the earth. Thank you. You went right to them both. And why is your face? Who did that to your face? Who? Well, thank you for your candor, right? I'm gonna let you walk around like that till you did to see you. I'm about to leave out of here. Verse 17. Thus conversed God and his Lord as they went forth to see the work of the Lord, and to find that mortals had given up the places of Oahspe and come to live in villages and cities around about over the continent of Jud. They traveled for many days and nights. And when God had seen all the work of the Lord, he said, behold, it is good. They toil and seclusion. Thy toil and seclusion away from the lords of the upper heavens are severe, but thou art fashioning the love of millions, who shall bless thee. Now, whilst God sojourned here, and after here is reference number 6, and it says hither. Now, whilst God sojourned here, his hosts regaled themselves with the company of the Ashars and Asaphs in the kingdom of the Lord, and great was the love and rejoicing amongst them. We're going to pause right here at 29 minutes and 30 seconds. So we're going to pause here. So probably if all the chapters stay this short, well, clearly they're longer. But we may only be able to get through 2 in the morning instead of me trying to push 3 and then ending up at the 47-minute mark. So we definitely going to pause right here, right? Very tight schedule this morning. So let's hop over. A drop of distilled water will fix it. Thank you. Jump over to page 67 where we paused at. And The Black Dog Unleashed and the Field Guide to the Spirit World. All right? You can get it on Amazon. You can download it on Audible. It's even in Kindle. Right? Okay. There's not a PDF format of this. This is Susan B. Martinez's work, and she hasn't made it like free of charge or PDF yet for anybody. So you can go purchase it for a few bucks. Okay. Page 67. Time belong to the Baptist Church. Okay, so we just finished talking about the actor Robin Williams and how he took his own life and what began to happen with him, you know, behind the scenes, right? And so it ended yesterday. I'm going to reread. Yeah, let me reread this. Let me just reread these last two paragraphs in this, the scripture from the book of Frag Patty. So go to page 66, the second to the last paragraph when it starts, when actor Robin Williams. Okay. When actor Robin Williams took his own life, many asked how he could do it when he had everything: fame, wealth, adulation, family love, and plenty of work. Cavett 2014, page 54. Well, the unseen cause remains hidden. Maybe he had too much of a good thing, arousing the fiend of jealousy. Let me illustrate this point with a case from Dr. Wickland's files. One suicide, Mrs. X, who came through Mrs. Wickland, the medium, declared that, quote, evil spirits had been attracted to me by the jealous, emphasis added on jealous, by the jealous thoughts of other persons, end quote. Mrs. X, though extremely happy, had hanged herself in a bizarre fit of mania. Her spirit later explained, quote, as soon as I found myself out of my body, I saw at once the cause for my rash act, end quote. It seems that many were jealous of her lovely family. Wow. Imagine some people that have been, that's got to be a rude awakening. As soon as you follow through with that act, to see the entity and the surrounding circumstances that caused you to commit that act, but there's no going back now, right? Once the body has completely died, there is no going back. There is no being born again. Not through the mother's womb, right? You have been born into a new world, into a new realm now, and now you have to grow here, right? Her spirit let me just read that again. Let me illustrate this point with a case from Dr. Wickland's files. One suicide, Mrs. X, who came through Mrs. Wickland, the medium, declared that, quote, evil spirits had been attracted to me by the jealous, emphasis added, thoughts of other persons, end quote. Mrs. X, though extremely happy, had hanged herself in a bizarre fit of mania. Her spirit later explained, quote, as soon as I found myself out of my body, I saw at once the cause for my rash act, end quote. It seems that many were jealous of her lovely family. And that's something I try to tell to my children, right? Because sometimes they, and kids are known to throw fits, right? They're still learning. So I'm not saying none of this is happening to them or any younger child, but it very well could be. Like if you know that children are, or even not just children, but adults, if they're normally upbeat and happy, sometimes they do have these thoughts. I even had that happen to me. But now that I've learned, hold on, that definitely was not my thought. And when people don't recognize that those thoughts are not their own, they began to oppress them, and they began to take on those thoughts like they literally thought them up. That's how a lot of people get depressed, right? I'm so glad I learned this a little while ago, because when they come, I can immediately recognize, like, that was not my thought. You know, I don't need to say that out loud sometimes, but I can immediately recognize it, and I'll just shut it right down, right? Because if you give in to that, it's just going to take you, and maybe not day one, maybe not day two, maybe not week 2, but if you keep entertaining those thoughts, it literally, you intertwine your thoughts with that thought, and now the outside influence has more sway over your own spirit, right? So when it come in, especially if all of a sudden you start, and it happens sometimes where all of a sudden you start feeling like, oh my God, I just feel like I want to cry. Now, sometimes, you have to be careful. Sometimes it could be an indication that something is wrong somewhere. So, like me and my sisters, like my mom and stuff, like when that happens, first of all, we just double check. Okay, is everybody okay? We start calling around. Everybody okay over there? Yeah, I just had this feeling of weepiness that came on. We just want to make sure everybody okay. You know, it's like, all right, everybody good? And we phone around, we text, hey, son, what you doing? I ain't heard from you all day, you know. And once we find out everybody okay, you know, we like, okay, well, Father, I don't know what this is. But, you know, we may say a prayer or something because it could be something impending as well. Like sometimes we just don't know, but we just kind of run through our checks and then we say a prayer and we just let it go, right? You know, but some things, but if it is something pending, like upon your family, or like a family member you get in touch with, like, oh my God, I'm glad you called me. You know, it could be something, somebody could really need to talk at that moment, and you feel it, and you call them, and you find, you know, but you would get like that. It's called like a release in your spirit, so to speak. Spiritual people, Christian people say it. I felt the release in my spirit after that. Whatever you want to call it, right? But you would know if it was something of that matter. Right? Sometimes it's like you will soon find out what that was and why you was feeling that way. But sometimes you just got to kind of just, I don't know, pray about it and release it to the Father. Right? I don't know what it is. I done did my checks and stuff and I don't know. But you just have to you have to really be careful with it, right? Yeah, and spirits are always around us. Yeah, right. Oahspe does say that. Shebrew said, according to Oahspe, none of our thoughts are ours. Each and every thought is inspired by a spirit, either good or bad. Yeah, if you start paying attention, listen. Yeah, if you start paying attention to it, right, we will see. We can test some of this stuff. Kevin said, if the unseen was seen, life's, wouldn't it, Kevin? He said, if the unseen was seen, life's path would make so much more sense, right? It really would. But see, but I can kind of understand now why it's unseen, because think about people. This is how, I believe this is how character is created in us. Genuineness of spirit is created in us by us not being able to see everything, because you have those that is going to do, they're going to put on the show because this is what's required, right? But they don't really develop, right? And they don't do themselves any kind of justice by doing that, trying to fake the funk, making everybody else believe that you're doing what's right, when really you turning out twice the sons and daughters of hell as you are, right? And so I can understand, which is why our Asharzans, I guess sometimes they can, but what's required according to Oahspe, what I see is they have to inspire us without, because everybody can believe if you popping up, oh my gosh, it is really angels. Y'all are really here. Anybody can believe then, right? But we're supposed to be developing our spirit, not just what our flesh want to see. Hey, gratify me. Oh, don't feel good, don't want it. I'm going this way, heading to Oklahoma, right? And so I can understand why. I can see the method. I can understand the method of that madness, so to speak, or I can understand why that's done that way, right? And it also helps us, like, because it also doesn't force people to grow spiritually. You still get to choose whether you want to grow spiritually. You know, if the things are unseen and you begin to tap into that unseen portion of yourself, which is the true son of the Creator, son and daughter of Jehovah, the real you begin to take you can take initiative, right? Or you can take control of your spiritual growth. Like, yes, Father, it's time for me to grow up. Yes, your son, your daughter is returning home. Let's do this thing, right? When the student is ready to teach your peers, all your unseen help, even though most of the time they still won't flash themselves to you. AG, look, I'm real, they inspire us by different things. Things that we call coincidences aren't really coincidences. That's them lining up things, can kind of see ahead where you're going to just kind of put markers along the road to check in with you. So it's kind of like that. It's a great experience, at least I think so. Spiritual growth it's a wonderful journey. Shayla, hey cousin. Okay, where we at? 40 minutes. Okay, so go. Let me read this again. Listen, page 66. When actor Robin Williams took his own life, many asked how he could do it when he had everything: fame, wealth, adulation, family love, and plenty of work. Cabot, 2014, page 54. And did I say quote? End quote. Well, the unseen cause remains hidden. Maybe he had too much of a good thing, arousing the fiend of jealousy. Let me illustrate this point with a case from Dr. Wickland's files. One suicide, Mrs. X, who came through Mrs. Wickland, the medium, declared that, quote, evil spirits had been attracted to me by the jealous, emphasis added, thoughts of other persons, end quote. Mrs. X, though extremely happy, had hanged herself in a bizarre fit of mania. Her spirit later explained, quote, as soon as I found myself out of my body, I saw at once the cause for my rash act, end quote. It seems that many were jealous of her lovely family. What's more, quote, I did not know at that time that I was a psychic because I belonged to the Baptist church. Something got a hold of me. I didn't know what I was doing. I remember feeling very strange, as if somebody had taken complete hold of me, made me kill myself because they wanted to break up our happy home, end quote. Reviewing the case, Dr. Wickland would comment, quote, Fritz, shalom. I'm sorry, I didn't see you over there. Okay. Reviewing the case, Dr. Wickland would comment, quote, a great number of unaccountable suicides are due to the obsessing or possessing influence of earthbound spirits, some of whom are actuated by a desire to torment their victims, end quote. Wickland, 1974, page 132. Quote, and this is where we ended yesterday with this scripture from Oahspe, Book of Fragapati. Quote, wandering spirits pursued evil for evil's sake, persuading mortals to suicide and to all manner of wickedness. Others know not themselves who they really are, neither can they go away from the mortals to whom they are bound, end quote. Oahspe, Book of Fragapati, chapter 37, verse 3, and chapter 35, verse 7. Okay. Sometimes the possessing entity finds himself stuck in a mortal's body, becoming enraged because he cannot get out of it. In such circumstances, the only solution is to convince the host to commit suicide. This is serious, people, right? And we read before that some of these spirits, they engraft upon mortals by accident, right? It happens a lot in hospitals, right? Look, before I even go into a hospital, I make sure I'm protected. I'm like, Father, I don't even know what type of protection. Make sure there's no foolishness happening here with my spirit, right? And my sister, she has to constantly be aware. Anybody that works in the medical field, like she's an RN and she is constantly around death and mental issues and all of this stuff. And sometimes she's on suicide watch, sitting with different patients and stuff. So if somebody has to sit on suicide watch, imagine the spirits that are there. What's interesting is she shared a couple of times when she sat on the watch, they would warn her, like of course they break it up into watches, right? But when she has to go or she volunteers, some people be like, I can't, I was in there the other night and it's too much, right? Because sometimes it be all right, but sometimes the patients be going ham. But my sister understands what's happening. So when she goes in, she says she's never had a problem. She said the most unruly people in there that they have to, even sometimes they may have to strap down, she said it's completely quiet. And she said it seems like they come to themselves and they begin talking to her, and she's just in there quiet, just being mindful of who might be who might be present that's unseen. And, she just, she speak peace and she speak prayers of deliverance over the people. They don't hear it. She do it quietly and inwardly, right? But she said she's always had peace when she go in there. Like the most unruly people, she said it quiets down when she walks into the room. I'm like, go ahead, sis, daughter of the Creator. I'll be waiting sometimes like, girl, what stories you got today? And she has to be careful with how sometimes she shared the stories, because of HIPAA and everything like that. She doesn't share names or anything like that. She just kind of gives like a summation of different things, especially because of what we're studying. So I'm like, okay, so have you seen any of this? Right? It's really interesting. I love listening to my sister's stories, and especially if they have a cold on their floor when somebody's about to die, like she can feel the spirit, right? If she can feel death when it comes. And other people there who are not so spiritual, it's crazy. Sometimes she said because the nurses, they'll look around, they'll like kind of get scared sometimes, especially this one particular nurse who's she's a little more spiritually sensitive than some of the other ones. It's like they can feel it, right? And even there was somebody who had, it's probably been a few years now. This one person, she was there and she said the look in that person's eyes scared her, and they weren't able to revive this particular person, but the look on their face when they were taking their last breath, she said it was of absolute horror. Like a monster was standing over them, and it was like, like she had to FaceTime me to show me, and she said it was like, and after they made that like crazy face, they took their last breath, and they were not able to revive that particular person. I'm like, oh my gosh, what did they do? Like, I'm just like, it give me chills sometimes listening to some of the stories, but I'm like, yo, people don't realize sometimes the spiritual world is, I guess some people do, but sometimes if they don't really, some people like mentally are saying, yes, there's a spiritual world. Yes, we're spiritual beings. Yes, yes, we live a human experience. Like I was before last year when I did that Julian Spirits video, I was mentally assenting. Yes, we're spirits. We live in physical bodies, until I realized my spirit could not wake my physical body up. And like I could feel the difference between my spirit. Like from that day forward, like I thought I understood some things spiritually. But at that point, I realized I didn't know. Why'd you have naked down here, boy? I realized I didn't know all that I thought I knew at that moment. And that was last year, right? While have we started reading Oahspe yet? We may or may not have started reading Oahspe yet, but we was real close. We had just started. Go back to that Julian Spirits video. I keep bringing it up because that was definitely like a turning point in my life spiritually with me. Like I've interacted with spirits and things. Like it's I don't know how to explain it. Maybe my thought process was like, yes, I know spirits are there. We interact. I can clearly hear them, but I wasn't really understanding that I myself was a spirit. I'm just like, yeah, I'm a mortal. These are spirits and they're here, and it's just how it is. It's just like something changed about a year ago on the inside of me where it's like, hold up. Hold up.
Before I go to sleep, sometimes I'll say, I'm not this body nor this mind.
Yeah.
Far greater.
Yeah, Jeremiah got this whole. You want to repeat the whole thing?
So.
Or you can't get it because you ain't got no shirt, boy.
What I say is, I am neither the body nor the mind. I am something far greater, and I excel at everything I put my mind to.
Jeremiah got this whole personal development type thing where
people say I'm narcissistic, but I'm not. It's called having self-confidence, and if you don't have that, you have nothing.
He's still growing. Sometimes he can't. Well, I know my son. From the outside, if I didn't know him, I say, boy, you've got to be the most arrogant thing ever. And it's not that he really believes at most times. Sometimes he may be a little off, right? But he'll do his little studying and stuff. And what he knows is like, what I know. You're not going to deter me from what I know. Like, I've experienced this. I know this, right? And he could share with you, or I could share with you, a chilling episode of when he found out that he is not just a body, but he's a spirit. And the body can be infiltrated by other spirits, because there was I don't know if I should share this. We got time? I got to be out of here in a few minutes.
I say, if you are to share that, don't get deep in detail.
Yeah, I can't even share it with y'all today because I got to go in a few minutes. But we're going to come back to this, all right? I'm sure we still got a lot of this book to read. We're going to talk about when we bring up demon possession again. I'm going to bring this up. Because I got to tell y'all that whole story. Remember I told y'all It's some videos ago. Like, he was the child. Like, I knew this would be the child that's gonna, I ain't gonna say help me. It should have been help me. At that time, I was saying, this is gonna be the child that's gonna make me grow spiritually leaps and bounds. Because at time, and I was joking, I was like, at times I wouldn't go to sleep because I thought Jeremiah was demon possessed. Like, I was joking, but I was so serious, right? Because there was a time where something took a hold of him, and I could see it, and not just me, but my nephew and my sister, the one who works in the hospital. And I grabbed her, I was like, oh my God. And my nephew was like, that is not my cousin. And he turned around. Jeremiah's, and now I understand now what happened to him, and his eyes got fully dilated. It's like his face, I was like, oh my God. And I wanted to pass out, but I couldn't. I was like, how do we help my son? You know, and so, but we'll get into that. So it's just a little snippet preview about the whole situation that happened. But we'll come back to that. Let me finish reading a little bit of this because I got to end this in about 5 minutes. Okay, let's go back. We're on page 67.
You gotta go to school.
Yes, I do. I got to sit in class. And I think I'm going to change my clothes too. Okay, sometimes the possessing entity, we're on page 67. We're still in the chapter, The Black Dog Unleashed. Sometimes the possessing entity finds himself stuck in a mortal's body, becoming enraged because he cannot get out of it. In such circumstances, the only solution is to convince the host to commit suicide. Eugene Maury, exorcist extraordinaire, offers this explanation for a person who, quote, attempts suicide without obvious or known reason. All too often, the possessing entity tries to kill the host's body simply because the invading spirit becomes tired of living in the body he has chosen. The entity apparently finds himself trapped. He wants out and convinces his host to commit suicide, end quote. Maury, 1988, page 147 to 148, and page 63. Psychiatry, however, calls such urgings command hallucinations, the delusional voices of schizophrenics. No ghosts need apply. You see how they just brush past all of this, like people is making this stuff up, right? Listen, hold on. Psychiatry, however, calls such urgings command hallucinations, the delusional voices of schizophrenics. No ghosts need apply. Yet given the number of hauntings, and after hauntings there's an asterisk, and I'm going to have to reread this again. Let me read the asterisk. Yet the given number of hauntings, and down at the bottom it says, a good number of irrational suicides have been linked to haunted places where, indeed, an earlier suicide had taken place. Spooky old England is full of such tales. In one, an army officer visiting an English country house, quote, had no reason at all to be contemplating suicide, end quote. Archer, 1967, pages 92 to 93. Nevertheless, quote, horrible thoughts began to enter his mind, followed by a feeling of despair and an urge to kill himself, end quote. Some irresistible compulsion found him climbing out of the window to get to the pond. Shaken, he turned away in time, but later a maid in the middle of cleaning went out and did exactly, Shaken, he turned away in time, but later a maid in the middle of cleaning went out and did actually drown herself in the pond. There was no apparent motive for her to act. Consulting public records, it was found that since the reign of James I, a large number of suicides had occurred at that pond. Okay, so go back up. Psychiatry, however, calls such urgings command hallucinations, the delusional voices of schizophrenics. No ghosts need apply. Yet, the number of hauntings and poltergeist cases that involve a suicide, remember that Julio, the focal agent of the Miami poltergeist, was suicidal, no amount of hallucinations can cause stones to fly about, eggs to be thrown of themselves, bricks falling inside the house out of nowhere, crockery smashing, mirrors tearing off the wall, furniture moving. All this and more occurred during the Jaboticable poltergeist event. All this and more occurred during the Jaboticable poltergeist event in Brazil in the 1960s. The focal agent was an 11-year-old girl named Maria, quote, a natural medium, end quote. The poltergeist was vicious, penetrating Maria's flesh with needles, attempting to smother her, setting her clothing on fire. Quote, perhaps her unseen attackers somehow administered the final blow. In 1970, she was found dead of apparent suicide. She had consumed a soft drink laced with pesticide, end quote. Galley, 2000, page 198 through 199. Suicide, in fact, is not unusual in cases of possession where the poor victim feels it is her only hope for release from the torment of intrusion. June Smith, a psychotic, hacked herself to death after setting fires in her house to, quote, combat an evil spirit, end quote. McCall, 1998, page 135. The, quote, rapid cycling, end quote, see chapter 9. We'll get to that when we get to chapter 9. The rapid cycling, see chapter 9, seen in the other victims of possession, often entails suicidal attempts during the low end of the cycle. Duke and Hodgman, 1992, page 37. In the same way, MPD, multiple personality disorder victims, not infrequently find themselves at the mercy of a suicidal altar. Several years ago, a colleague of mine shared with me a most compelling, unpublished account of, quote, demonic oppression. He sent me a transcript of the victim's own testimony in which she declares that the, quote, unseen fiend tried to block and stop anything and everything in my life. It is constantly telling me to commit suicide. Emphasis added on, it is constantly telling me to commit suicide. It is constantly trying to merge, emphasis added on merge. It is constantly trying to merge with my mind, end quote. She explained that it all began decades ago when she, young and naive, stayed at an ashram in India and was centered around a certain guru who had instructed his followers to, quote, merge with him, end quote. For reference sake, I will call her FD, meaning, quote, former devotee. Hold on. Oh, I remember that movie with Leonardo DiCaprio, Elijah. Key, you said, made me wonder where these people's ashars be. Remember? Some of them done ran them off. That's what it tell us. Some of them, they get so turned around and upside down that they literally run their ashars off. And then it's just they're like free game to the hovering spirits that want to take control. Yes, babe. Yeah, okay, we'll stay off the stairs, okay? Okay. Yeah, look. Let me finish reading this paragraph. We gotta go. For reference sake, I will call her FD, meaning former devotee. FD, who claims that the guru was actually a phony and pedophile, wrote, quote, I am sending this letter anonymously because of fanatics in his ranks who harass people, or worse, who tell the truth about their experiences, end quote. Yeah, we see how you was trying to get your devotees to merge with you. He trying to merge into you. How, like the biting poltergeist, was the, quote, unseen force, end quote, that assailed FD. Quote, hold on. Let me go back. Several years ago, a colleague of mine shared with me a most compelling, unpublished account of, quote, demonic oppression, end quote. He sent me a transcript of the victim's own testimony in which she declares that the, quote, unseen fiend tried to block and stop anything and everything in my life. It is constantly telling me to commit suicide, emphasis added. It is constantly trying to merge, emphasis added, with my mind, end quote. She explained that it all began decades ago when she, young and naive, stayed at an ashram in India that was centered around a certain guru who had instructed his followers to, quote, merge with him, end quote. For reference sake, I will call her FD, meaning former devotee. FD, who claims that the guru was actually a phony and pedophile, wrote, quote, I am sending this letter anonymously because of fanatics in his ranks who harass people, or worse, who tell the truth about their experiences, end quote. How, like the biting poltergeist, was the, quote, unseen force, end quote, that assailed FD. I have been beaten, punched, and kicked by something unseen. All of a sudden, after I touched his guru's feet, I was hearing a male voice calling me filthy names and demanding that I obey it or it would hurt me, end quote. Later, there was, quote, a horrendous, malevolent presence in my room and odd noises in my home. I had been sexually assaulted by something unseen. I have been stung, burned, and been given excruciating pain throughout my body. It often tells me that the only way I can stop the pain is to commit suicide, emphasis added. I hear that there are suicides associated with him. How many others had the situation that I had been faced with for so many years and felt such deep guilt and shame that they could not tell anyone. Hold on, let me go back. Hold on. I have been stung, burned, and been given excruciating pain throughout my body. It often tells me that the only way I can stop the pain is to commit suicide, emphasis added. I hear that there are suicides associated with him. How many others had the situation that I have been faced with for so many years and felt such deep guilt and shame that they could not tell anyone what they were suffering? Personal communication. The most urgent message that I want to convey in this chapter is that suicide does not, quote, end it all, end quote. In fact, negative conditions are actually magnified in the non-physical state without a body to anchor these miseries, right? We learned that. The body, the flesh, is like an anchor for your spirit. You're able to do something about it here, and quite easily compared to not having a body and getting control of that in the spiritual realm. Now you might find yourself at the middle of a knot. The most urgent message that I want to convey in this chapter is that suicide does not, quote, end it all, end quote. In fact, negative conditions are actually magnified in the non-physical state without a body to anchor these miseries. Quote, how more helpless is a deranged spirit than a mortal? They float on their own wild thoughts, end quote. Oahspe, Book of Fragapati, chapter 29, verse 5, and chapter 33, verse 18. Of all of Mrs. Piper's mediumistic messages, those who had died by suicide were the most confused, desperate, miserable, and lost. I'm going to read this again. Of all of Mrs. Piper's mediumistic messages, those who had died by suicide were the most confused, desperate, muddled, miserable, and lost, because they thought they was doing a good thing and they thought that they were going to be able to get away from what was tormenting them. But they realized real quickly at the moment they are born into the spiritual realm that what was tormenting them becomes magnified. And there is no getting away from this time, right? Now you got to actually wait for deliverance in the spiritual realm. Hopefully somebody in your family that understood. Hopefully if you had somebody in your family, sometimes things happen, right? Sometimes we're not aware, and that's no slight on anybody. But sometimes people, we just don't know until we do, right? But it still could be that we could still help. Now that we know, we could help deliver you, even though you've passed on. But if someone's passed by taking their own life, they're still here, right? They're still hovering on the earth plane, right? And with us still being here on the earth plane and by having dominion over this realm, we can help them, right? We can help deliver them and get them to where they can be restored in the spiritual realm and move on and continue growing in a healthy light. And hopefully by the time we pass our flesh back to the dirt and we graduate, we'll see them up there somewhere way ahead of us in the classes, graduating and thriving and growing, right? So, of all of Mrs. Piper's mediumistic messages, those who had died by suicide were the most confused, desperate, muddled, miserable, and lost. Quote, some people remained in the void, especially if they had committed suicide. End quote. Melvin Morse, Closer to the Light. With the multiple Jenny, quote, the threat of suicide was constant. She spoke about wanting to die. Death, she said, was the only way out of pain and confusion. In death, she would find peace. End quote. Spencer, 1989, page 255. What a delusion. Quote, and life is indestructible. End quote. Jack London, X, suicide. Anytime you see in a book, or at least in here, when there's an X after their name, that means they've already died. Like they're completely spirit, right? Okay. Got a couple minutes. My alarm gonna go off again here shortly. Hopefully I'm gonna try and beat my alarm. Let me read to the end of this right here. Okay. Well, the bottom of page 69. Mrs. X, if you recall, was a sensitive but did not know it. She came through Mrs. Wickland to explain her sorry tale, suicide by hanging, as compelled by jealous spirits. Still bound to the earth sphere, she related through the medium, quote, the indescribable mental hell she was in. Oh, the horrors of despair and remorse I have gone through, end quote. Dr. Wickland's comment, quote, those who have ended their physical existence as suicides find themselves still alive and having no knowledge of a spirit world, labor under the delusion that their self-destructive attempts have failed and continue their suicidal efforts. When they come in contact with mortal sensitives, they mistake their physical bodies for their own and impress the sensitives with morbid thoughts and instigate them to deeds of self-destruction. The fate of a suicide is invariably one of deepest misery, his rash act holding him to the earth's sphere. End quote. Wickland, 1974, pages 132 through 133. Okay. The suicide, in other words, is literally anchored to the earth. He hopes to escape. In ethnographic accounts, one finds many examples of these earthbound EB spirits. Iberian and Russian traditions held that the fairies are spirits of the dead, or more precisely, of the premature dead. For example, the Nixes are girls who committed suicide because of a broken heart. Like ghosts of the departed, they can make themselves visible to humans, but usually only to those with clairvoyant sight. In Jewish tradition, the mentally imbalanced may become a target for a dibuk, an invading spirit. A girl, Esther, was deranged of mind. The obsessing spirit was a man who had committed suicide by drowning himself. How did he invade Esther? Quote, the occasion was propitious. He knew that Esther had illicit relations with the young man and watched for the moment when she abandoned herself, emphasis added, to his embraces, end quote. At that instant, he entered her aura. Let me read this again. Listen to this. In Jewish tradition, oh my gosh, this is why the promiscuous get in trouble. Listen to this. In Jewish, I just had a whole thought hit me. In Jewish tradition, the mentally imbalanced may become a target for a dibuk, D-Y-B-B-U-K, an invading spirit. A girl, Esther, was deranged of mind. The obsessing spirit was a man. Go back upstairs, book. A girl, Esther, was deranged of mind. The obsessing spirit was a man who had committed suicide by drowning himself. How did he invade Esther? Quote, the occasion was propitious. He knew that Esther had illicit relations with a young man and watched for the moment when she abandoned herself, emphasis added on abandoned herself, to his embraces, right? She was in a relationship that she should not have been in. And at that moment of weakness, when you give into that opens the door for whatever spirits is coming around, right? And a lot of people come out of these illicit relationships with legions of demons, right? You don't realize oh my gosh, when y'all get tempted by something, you should see a door immediately pop, especially if you're being tempted by this fine, sexy hunk of a man or this most gorgeous, beautiful woman that talks so sweet to you, especially if you are already married, right? Let's just be honest about this. What you should immediately see is a door, right? And not just a door. What you should see, a whole scene should flash before your face. You shouldn't just see a door like, oh, I wonder what's behind that door. I hear a beautiful voice. But what you should see, just like when they when they taught the children in Shalom, right? The example that they gave, when they have to show a scene where they have to show a drunk or something illicit, they don't just show somebody acting drunk or beating their wife, but they also show the spiritual side simultaneously. So when you're teaching children, don't just show a drunk, but also show the good angel and the demon right here pulling and swaying this man. Beat your wife. No, don't beat your wife. You can go to jail. Beat the brakes off that hoe, right? You should see all of this going on, so it makes you stop and think, I don't think I want to open that door. Matter of fact, I'm going to Oklahoma. Right? Like, you run away as fast as you can. That's what should happen. You should see a door, right? And not only like I said, you should see the door, but you should see every few seconds, see Satan's head. People, oh, they was looking. I hope they ain't see me. Oh, they still contemplate. And you should be like, wait, what was that? Was that Satan? Right? You should see something like that happening. Like, you should get a spiritual download. You should be able to see into the spirit what's really happening here, right? But your senses, the guard on watch on the left side of your brain has been hypnotized at this point, and it's about to push some information through to the right side of your brain that's about to get you in trouble. It's going to destroy your family. It's going to destroy your body, right? Him who commits adultery sins against his own self. He is foolish, man or woman, right? We're just using that as an example. You are opening the door for something to come in. And there's a whole bunch of baggage you do not want. Most people don't stay and help you clean up the messes, right? And your life is destroyed. Listen, I'm just saying. Okay, it's 7:30. Okay, let me finish this paragraph. Look, listen. Page 70. In Jewish tradition, the mentally imbalanced may become a target for a dibuk, D-Y-B-B-U-K, an invading spirit. A girl, Esther, was deranged of mind. The obsessing spirit was a man who had committed suicide by drowning himself. How did he invade Esther? Quote, the occasion was propitious. He knew that Esther had illicit relations with a young man and watched for the moment when she abandoned herself, emphasis added on abandoned herself, to his embraces, end quote. At that instant, he entered her aura. Oahspe, 1935. In another case reported by T. Oahspe, 1935, page 10. A boy was possessed by, quote, an evil and lying demon, end quote. The mother was upset that her son didn't even have his own voice, nor did the boy recognize her. When the demon spoke through his mouth, he, quote, declared that he is the spirit of a man killed in war, emphasis added on killed in war, end quote. This brings us to the psychotic toll of war and inevitably military. Hold on. This brings us to the psychic toll of war and inevitably military suicide. Corporal James Jenkins fought bravely in the ferocious 55-hour Battle of Najaf, Iraq, 2004, and was awarded a Bronze Star. But after his second tour in Iraq, he could not sleep. And if he did, the nightmares were horrible. Jenkins, depressed and full of remorse, was unable to be intimate with his fiancée. He told his mother, quote, I killed 213 people, Mom. I can't live like this, end quote. Dolby 2008, page 14. He cried like a baby. Later, he shot himself fatally in the right temple. The 23-year-old African-American, like so many other young Marines, was suffering from untreated PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. They called it shell shock in the First World War, then battle fatigue in the Second. Increasingly euphemistic, it became operational exhaustion in Korea, and finally PTSD in Vietnam. In the early 90s, they called it the Gulf War syndrome. No matter what you call it, combat trauma involves devastating and even mysterious symptoms, which may include nightmares, flashbacks, panic attacks, paranoia, hypervigilance, racing thoughts, memory loss, guilt, depression, exhaustion and insomnia, rashes, balance disturbances, trembling, palpitations, seizures. Have I left anything out? Yes, the syndrome, sometimes in delayed response, entails behavioral problems on the home front, which, as the cases pile up, involve substance abuse, domestic violence, impotence and or divorce, personal isolation, detachment, edginess, helplessness, hopelessness, joblessness, homelessness, vehicular suicide, crime, suicide. Quote, everybody's lives, I'm gonna just read it, right? Quote, everybody's lives are shitholes. All of us have the same problems, end quote. Sergeant P. Ulleth, Marine Corps vet with PTSD and seizures, quoted in Dolby 2008. And right here, y'all, we're going to pause, right? I absolutely have to go. But this is getting really, really good. I won't repeat this, but, you know, it's a Marine, and I had to quote it like the Marine said it, right? For you to get the full feel of what was happening to them and what they estimate. Okay, so we'll pause on page 72. 72. This was good. It's gonna go more into the PT. Matter of fact, we jumped ahead and we got to the PTSD. Okay, so remember, I think it's 2 videos ago when it first brought up PTSD, it told us to jump ahead to read this section. We didn't go all the way back to this page. I think we started on the next page, 77. Oh, no, we did. We started on page 76. It's just, yeah, today we stopped at page 72. But where we started at when we jumped ahead was on page 76 at the 3rd paragraph. So tomorrow we'll probably get into the rest of that. Matter of fact, tomorrow we're going to finish this chapter. It's Sunday and we got a lot of time. So, but yeah, this is good. I'm going to probably re-listen to this video while I'm driving to school. All right, y'all. So let me do my page. I didn't do my page for a while. Y'all be trying to get all this in. Hold on. Oh, that's why. Because I didn't put my tab. That's why I couldn't find it. Page 24. I'm sorry. All right, y'all. It is Saturday, November the 12th, 2022, day 261 of year 4 of reading through the books of the law and the prophets, and of the 4-year consecutive day count, day 1,280. We read in Oahspe. We're still in the book of Su.i.c.id.e, pages 22 to 24. And in the Field Guide to the Spirit World, we read pages 67 to pages 72. And we are still in chapter 3, right? Yeah, we're still in chapter 3, which is entitled The Black Dog Unleashed, which is giving a lot of attention and understanding to suicide, how it happens, and how people are opened up to these deranged spirits that are still here floating without a body, right? That's, All right, y'all. Father, we thank you that you are very meticulous, and we thank you that you are bringing out the truth for us to understand and help ourselves get free, but not just ourselves, but our brothers and our sisters that are suffering with unknown causes and cases of things that the medical and the psychiatric colleges and stuff cannot figure out. We're missing the spiritual portion of ourselves, and thank you that in this time you are bringing that to light for all of us. All right, y'all. And may the Father comfort all those who have been touched by suicide in one way or another, whether it's family or friends, all right? So I love y'all. I'm going to have to come back and read these comments later. I have got to get out of here. And I got to change my clothes before I go to school. I love y'all. I'll see y'all back here tomorrow morning. We will be here at 7:30 tomorrow, right? And we'll go as long as we're going to go. Probably till we're done reading the end of this chapter. I love y'all. I'll see y'all back here tomorrow morning, bright and early, 7:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Peace.